Good morning, and this is your Algebra Do Now video key for 28.1. And if I said x equaled 1, what does x times 2 times x minus 1 equal? Well, I could say x is 1, so that's 1 plus 2, and then 1 minus 1. You might immediately notice that I've got a 0 in there. 1 minus 1 is going to be 0. I don't even need to bother to work out that 1 plus 2 is 3. I mean, it is, but 3 times 0 is going to be 0. So I don't have to do a lot of work once I notice that if x is 1, one of these two factors, the x minus 1, becomes 0 because 1 minus 1 is 0. Let's try if x was negative 2. We've got negative 2 plus 2 and negative 2 minus 1. Now, I do this, you might notice again, negative 2 plus 2 is doodly squat. That's 0. So it doesn't really matter that negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. This thing is just going to equal 0 because I have 0 negative 3's. If we multiply anything times 0, we get 0. 0 is what we get. Now let's take a look at this one. This is a little more complicated. Oh my goodness, there's 4 linear equations being multiplied. How could you ever possibly do that? Well, let's look at this whole thing. I'm going to replace x with 9. 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 Oh my goodness, there's a 9 minus 9 right there. That 9 minus 9 is a 0. So when I get a 0 right there as one of the factors, everything else doesn't really matter. This thing is going to equal 0. Okay. Now, what other x values would make this equal 0? Well, there's some things we could do. So I'm going to copy this in here. So I'm going to do it 4 times. So the first one, of course, we already know that 9 minus 9 will make the first factor equal 0. Okay. So everything else being 9 minus blah, blah, blah. We don't care about all that other stuff. But what would make x plus 22 equal 0? Well, negative 22 plus 22 would be 0. So it doesn't matter what all these other things are. You don't even have to bother calculating them because once this right here is equal to 0, the whole thing is 0. So I'm going to put up at the top x can be negative 22. Okay, and let's look at the next one. Well, we've worked out 9 and negative 22. X could also be 19. 19 minus 19 would do the job. So it doesn't matter what 19 plus 22 is. It doesn't matter what 19 minus 9 is. And it doesn't matter what 19 minus 102 is. So x could be 19 because this 19 minus 19 is just 0. Just like this 22, negative 22 plus 22 is 0. And this 9 minus 9 is 0. If you're hearing a cat in the background, that's because our cat Demi is very sad because my wife is in another room and she's very attached to her. And so she can't get to her. So let's look through here. We've already worked out what would make all of these equal to 0, each one. What would make x minus 102 equal 0? Well, if x was 102, then 102, x minus 102 would be 0. So it doesn't matter what 102 minus 19 is. It doesn't matter what 102 plus 22 is. It doesn't matter what 102 minus 9 is because 102 minus 102 over here is 0. And if anything is multiplied by 0, that's going to be 0. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that 102 minus 102 back in there. And I'll go ahead and put the 19 minus 19 back in there just so we can see that. If you want to pause, I'm going to put a negative 22 plus 22 in there. And I'll put a 9 minus 9. So each one of these, go ahead and say, or 102, each one of these is going to equal 0. Let me scroll up so you can see the whole thing. So that equals 0 because 9 minus 9 is 0, and so one of your factors is 0. This equals 0 because negative 22 plus 22 is 0, so that's one of your factors is 0. And this equals 0 because 19 minus 19 here is 0. And the last one equals 0 because x is 102. So if x is 102, then we've got 0. So the following things will equal 0. If this is the function of x, the function of 9 will equal 0 because x is 9. The function of negative 22 will equal 0. And the function of 19 will equal 0 because x is 19. We input x as 19. One of our factors becomes 0. And the function of 102 also equals 0. All of these equal 0 for these particular x values. So in addition to x being 9. All right, I hope that was helpful, and I will stop for now.